Hi guys and welcome to the Unquendor Guitars workshop. My name is Daniel and in this video I'm going to try and make a leather guitar strap to go with my Phoenix guitar build. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. I'm going to make the strap from these two pieces of leather. First, this nice orange leather. It's nice, soft, very flexible. That's going to go on the inside of the guitar strap. And for the strap itself, I'm going to use this nice black sturdy leather. I have half a height here. So the first thing I need to do is cut some strips for the strap. My design requires two straps, one 55 millimeters wide and the other 40 millimeters wide. And to help me cut those strips from this sturdy leather, I'm going to use a strap cutter. And this is just a basic tool with a razor sharp knife that I can use to very easily cut my straps, as long as I know there's a straight edge on the side of my hide, which this one has. So yeah, let's cut the first strip. So here's the strap cutter and you can see there's a tiny little knife in there. And I can use this on the leather. Try and make the first cut. Like so. And now I can just run the strap cutter along the edge of the leather and cut my strap. So, our strap. So, and let's also cut the smaller one or the narrower one, 40 millimeters. Exactly the same, like so. Oh. The start can be a bit tricky sometimes. Come on. So, and here's the narrow part for the strap. Here we have our two leather straps, the narrow one 40 millimeters wide and the wider one, the 55 millimeters wide. And we're going to focus on them in a moment because unfortunately I can't use the strap cutter to cut the same straps from the orange leather. This is way too flexible, way too soft for the strap cutter to work properly, because you really need the solid edge of the sturdier leather to act as a guide or as a reference on the tool's handle. So unfortunately we have to cut the orange leather by hand in just a moment, because first we're going to focus on cutting the leather straps to length and make some nice points and ends to these straps. So first thing to do is to protect the workbench. And I'm going to just put a piece of MDF on my bench because it's all I have. You can use a cutting mat, but at the moment I don't have one. So piece of MDF it is to protect both my workbench and to keep all the knives sharp. Small little disclaimer on this video. I'm by no means a professional leather worker. This is just a hobby, and every technique you see me do or use and every tool I have is just what I have access to and what I've thought myself. So if you are a professional leather worker and you see some points I can improve on, let me know in the comment section down below. Now first let's cut these straps to length. And for the wide strap I'm going to need 1 meter long. So I have a 1 meter ruler So that's easy. And I have one of those leather working knives that I can use to easily cut the leather like so. You can use a scalpel or a box cutter or a utility knife, but I found that having a half moon knife, I think it's called, a leather worker's knife, it makes it much easier. Instead of having to carve your way through the leather, you could see it, you can just roll this knife over. It's razor sharp and it cuts the leather real nice. What you also can do, and what I did for a while, is use a chisel. Basically the same. You can just put your chisel on the leather and cut it like so. Real nice if you want to cut a straight edge. And with the strips cut to the correct length, it's time to design the tip or the ends of the strap. And I, of course, already designed my ends. I make these straps more often, so I've transferred the design onto some wooden templates. But I'm going to show you real quick how to make an easy design and fully symmetrical template, temporary template for your strap. It's very easy. All you need is just a sheet of paper and cut a strip this exact same width as your strip or your strap, strip, like so. Use a ruler, move to the side for a moment, and now I'm using a scalpel blade. And take a piece of paper or a strip of paper, and I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise to get a center line. And fold it over and you have a strip of paper the same width as your strap with a center line. And now with the fold to the outside, I'm going to design whatever I want. A round over, a tip, or maybe a, I don't know, maybe come in something like this, a bit wider. Of course, you have to keep in mind there needs to be a hole right here for the strap button. So make sure there's enough material right here at the end to allow for that. And you can design it freehand or be more precise. For example, use a ruler for the first part. Maybe something like this. And the nice thing is you only have to design one side, because now I can fold it in half. Take a pair of scissors and cut along your line and try to be as smooth as you can. And now you have your design. You can place it on your strap and use a marker, a leather marker or another pen that writes on leather. Mark around it and start cutting it using a knife. I don't think you can cut it with scissors, but use a knife and trace around your template. Unfortunately, I forgot to press record while I was explaining how I'm using my wooden template and a half moon leather knife to trim the leather around the template to create the shape of the tip of this strap. So Yeah, that's why I'm doing a voiceover right now, and later on in the video I explain in more depth why I'm using a half moon knife instead of, for example, a utility knife, scalpel or box cutter. So, one side done, and I think using a leatherworker's knife is much safer on your hands. You're not pulling a knife towards you or away from you. Much safer, much easier, and yeah, one side is done. It's a bit rough, but we're going to clean this up in just a moment. Time to do the other side. More rounded over and a bit easier for me to show you. Just cut this side, this side. You can clean this up as much as you like using the knife. And here we are. So, nice. 4 strap ends done, and now it's time to smooth out the edges a bit more. You can still see some straight edges from cutting. And to do so, I'm going to use some 240 grit sandpaper. And this is rough enough or coarse enough to get rid of those straight edges and give the strap ends a nice shape. And it doesn't take much at all. And to get rid of all fiber sticking out, I'm using some 320 grit sandpaper and smooth it out a bit more and get rid of all the rough fibers that might be sticking out of the edge. And I'm going to run the 320 grit along the entire edge of the strap. So yeah, the final finishing touches. And I think I'm done. Just a bit of sanding and now I have nice and consistent edges, nice and clean. All the curves are smooth and the roundovers are nice and consistent, so I'm pretty happy. Next step is making a groove along the edge of the strap with the offset, and I have this specialized groove cutter tool. It's a tiny cutter here at the end and it's adjustable, so you can set your offset and you use the shiny bit as a guide running along the edge of your strap. And I think it's easier to show you. I'm going to start right here at the end of the strap. Get a nice start. And I'm going to follow along the entire strap. And you can hopefully see it cutting a little groove. And the trick is to keep a persistent angle or a consistent angle and a consistent pressure to get the best result. And on some types of leather this works better than others. I found that the harder the leather is, the easier this is. It's more difficult on softer or more flexible leather types. And making this turn right here is a bit tricky. You don't want to overshoot. So very carefully. Here we go. One groove. And if there are some inconsistencies where the groove is just a bit shallower or not as wide, you can very carefully run the cutter through the same groove again, making it slightly deeper, a bit more pronounced. Like here, there's a narrower section. So, and the last little bit. So here are our grooves in the leather, and I hope this shows up on camera if it wants to focus on the leather instead of my hands and my head. So these grooves help me to later on align all the holes I need to punch for the stitching, and once the stitching is done it will be flush with the top, the nice side of the leather. And yeah, it just adds a bit of added luxury, added detail to the strap, I think. So now with the grooves in both the straps, we can start working with the orange leather. So I'm going to put this aside for a moment. First I need a cutting board, this one. And of course our nice orange leather. There's some printing on the back, but you won't see it once I'm done. Let's see, it will fall down by its own weight if I keep it hanging over the edge of the workbench, but this will do. And I'm not going to measure, I'm going to cut a strip slightly wider than our strap. So keep it sticking out on one end. Here just a bit. Take a long straight edge. Like so. I can take this to the side for now. Take my knife and cut this strip as straight as possible. So here we go, and you can use a leather knife like this just to cut through the leather. So we've cut the orange leather strips to the correct width and the correct length. They're a bit oversized, but now I can stick these two parts together so we have a nice orange liner on the inside of our guitar strap. And to do so, I'm going to use a contact glue, an invisible drying contact glue. I'm using the, I think, well-known European brand Bison, and this is just a flexible glue, among other things, suitable to glue leather. And you have to use this glue by applying a layer of glue to both surfaces you want to stick together. Have it cure for about half an hour before you stick these parts together, and then you have an instant bond, a very strong and instant bond. And after everything is glued together, I'm going to trim the edges of the leather, and then we can start preparing to stitch the parts together permanently. So let's make sure the right side is up. So this is the side with the grooves. So this is going to be down. And there are two defects in the leather right here on that side. So I'm going to use this side. This is where the mark is. So this is the right side up. And of course, this is also the rough side of the leather, is also the right side up to put some glue on. So let's practice on the small piece first. Oh yeah, and this is the drippy glue. This is not the gel. You also have a gel, but that doesn't cure clear. So I have to take a bit care with this glue. And I'm going to use a spreader to spread the glue around, make sure it's nice and even. So that's one. I'm going to put this aside. And the next one. As you can see, you always need more than you expect. I don't know why that is. So, and let this cure. So this is the last part, and yeah, it can get messy when using this type of glue. So let's put it right here, and now let all these pieces cure for about 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes, so everything should feel dry to the touch, and it does. It's real crazy when you think about it, that something you're going to glue feels dry to the touch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some spacers onto the orange leather, because as soon as these two pieces touch, they will stick. So I hope that these spacers allow me for some adjustment and I don't stick anything down accidentally. So right here, I'm going to move this, and I'm going to very carefully try and stick the black leather onto the orange. goes well enough. So these sticks are just a precaution. And here you go. And you can see it's an instant bond. Next step, I'm going to take a roller and I'm going to roll the orange onto the black. And I'm terribly sorry for the squeaking noise. There's a bit of glue here. I have to remove in a moment. So that's one. Now do the narrow strap as well. Here we go. So here we go. Use a roller. I'm sorry for the noise. So we can clean this off in a moment. And here we are, nicely bonded together. And the next step is of course trim the excess from the straps. I'm going to put the long one aside just for now and start with the small one. And it's very straightforward. Just use a knife and, like I said, trim the excess. So, and after trimming everything flush, I'm once again going to use a piece of sandpaper and make sure I sand these edges flush to one another. And really make sure it's nice and clean, because the next step will be blackening the edge so that we have a nice and black edge instead of seeing the orange and the black together. So again, 240 grit sandpaper. First pass, make sure everything is nice and flush, and then remove any loose fibers, any rough spots with some 320 grit. So, yeah, I'm done sanding with the 320 grit sandpaper, and now the orange leather is flush on the side with the black strap. And now I'm going to treat those edges with some black leather dye and a thing called a dauber to apply the dye to the edges of the leather. Carefully shake it a bit. And here we go. Put a bit of dye on the end of the dauber, and I'm going to apply it very carefully to the edge of the strap, going from the black onto the orange, not the other way around, because I would scrape dye onto the orange too much. And we're done. And the nice thing is this dye dries incredibly quick. So just a couple of minutes and we can start burnishing the edges. So the dye is ready to be burnished, and you can get specialized burnishing products that you can apply to the side of your leather to help you with getting a nice smooth finish on the edges. Some like to just use a bit of water, but what I like to do first is, with the dye just applied, I'm going to take a burnishing stick, and it's just a piece of birch usually with a rounded groove in it, and you can buy them from a leather worker, a leather supply store or something. But I made one myself by just cutting a groove with a rounded file into a birch dowel. And now it's just a matter of rubbing it over the edges. And you will see that the edge of your leather starts to shine and starts to become real smooth. It's easier on the thicker leather than it is on the orange. The orange can be a bit tricky to get smooth. But what I'm trying to do mostly is trying to blend in the seam in between those two layers. It's not a necessary step, but it just gives a nice finished look and feel to the edge. You can see the edge right here is pretty dull. And with the burnisher stick and applying a lot of force, a lot of pressure, I can try and blend everything together. But you can see I now have a nice and shiny smooth edge. And this just takes a lot of elbow grease, time and effort. And I have a two-stage approach, and this is stage 1, and I'll show you stage 2 in a moment, when I'm done with both the narrow strap and the longer strap, or the wider strap. So guys, when burnishing an edge, you can end up with a little ridge right here on the edge of your leather. And there's specialized tools to remove that edge or to break that edge. You can do it before you start burnishing. I like to do it after, especially with this type of leather. It seems to work a bit better after burnishing. So, and how this little tool works is there's a very sharp cutting edge inside here and a highly polished inside. So this in one go, when hold in the correct angle, and it's a bit tricky to find the cutting angle, it will cut, as you can see, a tiny bit of that edge, and by applying pressure it burnishes the rest of the edge back down. And now I've ended up with a nicely rounded edge. This is a very useful tool to have to break the edges on your leather, to burnish edges in the same go. So very useful tool. The next step in my burnishing process is applying a tiny bit of microcrystalline wax to the edges, and again use my burnishing stick or a burnishing disc to really smoothen out all the little fringes that might be present with the orange leather. So yeah, oh, pretty easy. Pop the can of microcrystalline wax, put a bit on my finger and just carefully apply it to the edge of the leather strap. You could also use a stick of beeswax or carnauba wax in a stick. That might be easier than doing it like so, because you can just rub the stick of wax along the edges. But I don't have that, so, and I really like microcrystalline wax. So, some wax applied to this edge, and let this harden or cure or whatever you like to call it for a couple of minutes. And in the meantime I'm going to do the wider strap. So all the wax is applied to the wider strap, and now I can take out my burnishing stick again. And very carefully, I'm not applying as much pressure as I did before, because I don't want to mess up the edge we just created. But I'm very lightly going over the strap until I'm happy with the final result. So, yeah, let me burnish all the edges once more, and then I'll be right back with you guys, and we can finally start making a lot of holes in the leather strap and begin our stitching. So guys, all the edges are burnished to the best of my ability, and now it's finally time to start thinking about an orange stitching all around the edges of the strap in the groove we made earlier in this video. And to do so I'm going to need some tools. I'm going to use my arbor press or my fret press and two of these guys known as stitching irons or stitching forks. And this is a tool with 4 little teeth, diamond shaped teeth, all spaced a certain distance away, and you can use either a press or a hammer or a mallet and punch holes in that little groove, one series of holes after the other, until you're all the way around the leather strap. So I put the stitching fork or stitching iron into my arbor press. I have a little fence set up, and you can see I've been using this a lot, and there are 4 little holes right there that allow the punch to go through. Here's our leather strap, and I like to start at this end right now, and you can see I can align the strap in such a way, and the fence isn't 100% accurate because of course leather isn't dead straight, so I have to make sure I'm inside the groove with the teeth of the punch. And now I can just punch 4 holes in the leather, and to be sure I have accurate spacing and consistent spacing, I'm going to use the last or the first tooth of the punch. I'm going to align it with the first hole right there, or the last hole, and then I'm going to punch it again. So I'm adding 3 new holes with each pass or each punch action. And now you can see we have a line of diamond shaped holes all the way through the leather. So, and this will take a while, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put on some music, do all these holes, punch all the holes in both the narrow strap as the wide strap, and then I'll be back with you guys to show you how I treat these corners and the tip of the strap, because we can't use this punch to punch holes in this rounded bit right here. So yeah, let me continue and make all the necessary holes for the stitching, and I'll be right back. And here we are, all the holes on both the wider strap and the narrow strap are punched at the straight edges, and now we can focus on doing the tips. So, and to do the tips of the strap, we're going to need a scrap piece of MDF, a hammer or mallet of some sort, my stitching irons of course, and a leather marking pen. And what I like to do is I like to use my fork as a measuring tool. So I keep 2 of the teeth aligned with 2 previous holes, and I'm going to mark the next 2 positions. And I'm going to do the same. 1 here, 1 here. Same on the other side. So previous 2 positions, 1 here and 1 here. And this is what I like about leatherworking. You don't have to be too finicky, too precise with measurements, unlike with guitar building or woodworking in general. It's more reference based, and if it looks good, it is good. So it's a bit relaxing not to stress out about measurements, about being precise. And for the last one, I'm going to do it by eye right here. So all the positions for the new holes are marked. And now I'm going to use my single punch. And you can hopefully maybe see on camera, it's a diamond shaped punch. So I get a diamond shaped hole, and if I insert my punch into an existing hole, I can see that the flat side of the punch is parallel to the edge of the strap. So that's what I'm going to do for the other holes as well. So don't put it sideways like so, but keep the flat side aligned with the edge of the strap to the best of your ability. And then just hit it with a hammer all the way through. And do this for all the holes. So now with all the holes punched along the entire edge of these two straps, I can put this away. I can clean my workbench a bit because it's time to start stitching. And now with a clean bench, it's finally time to start stitching these two straps. And of course we're going to need a couple of things. First of all, some stitching thread, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, and I might mess it up on occasion. I might call it wire or string or whatever. In Dutch there's only one or two words to describe a piece of thread like this. But this is a cotton thread that's lightly waxed and especially made to hand stitch leather in a nice orange color. And of course we're going to need two needles, two blunt needles. Make sure they are fairly sized and that they are sturdy. You can buy leather stitching needles, but a thick crocheting needle, for example, also works. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how much thread we need to stitch all the way around a strap. And as a rule of thumb, I always take 4 times the length I need to stitch. So this strap is half a meter, so 500 millimeters. So in total I have almost 1 entire meter to stitch. So 4 times that amount is 4 meters. So luckily for me I have this bench to help me measure how much thread I'm going to need. And of course, this being a very narrow strap, these two sections I can take for granted. I have enough thread when taking 4 times the total length to be sure I can stitch this all the way around. So what I'm going to do on my bench, I'm going to use this bench dog. Oh, come on. Like so, to hold down the thread. And I'm going to go around the bench dogs 8 times, giving me approximately 4 meters and a bit spare of thread. So that's 6, 7 and 8 and a bit extra. Now the next thing to do is to thread the needle. And this is a bit tricky because you want the eye of the needle to be as narrow as possible. But here we go. It's in, and to make sure we don't lose the needle while stitching, there's a little trick, and I hope the camera picks this up. It's to take a bit of thread and approximately an inch or 2.5, 3 centimeters from the end, I'm going to stick the needle through its own thread, like so, and then run it all the way to the end. This can be a bit tricky sometimes. Make sure there isn't too big of a knot at the end, But now you have a loop and you can pull it tight, close to the needle. Like so, and this ensures us that we'll never lose the needle. It won't slide off the thread. So I've clamped the piece of leather in my vise just to make it easier, and I have my 2 needles, and the first thing we're going to do is find the center, and I like to start at the top end of a strap, 1 or 2 holes from the center, and I'm going to pull one of the needles through. Keep these 2 needles together, and we're going to pull all the way through. All the thread is being pulled through one of these holes until we find the center of our thread. I'm going to hold this while I put this thread, so on the back, I'm going to put this aside for now. Let's see. So here's that needle belonging to this thread that's coming from the back, and from now on it's really a matter of keeping those needles separated. So I'm going to put this aside so I'm sure I won't accidentally tie a knot or get my needles mixed up. And the next step is to run this needle, so this thread, through this hole. And it can be very tricky at first to get these needles through the hole, and that's why you need a sturdy needle, preferably a bit longer, and the eye of the needle as narrow as possible. That makes it a lot easier to pull it through, especially 2 layers of thick leather. Now we made half a stitch, so this is just half the stitch. This thread I'm going to make sure it's underneath the other thread and put my needle aside. Now take the previous needle belonging to the other thread and I'm going to push it through this hole, the same hole from the other side. With a bit of wiggling, I can pull it through, put it aside somewhere, pull it through, and now we made our first stitch, and this is called a saddle stitch. With the same needle, we're always starting a stitch from the nice side of the strap, pushing it through. Make sure there aren't any twists on this side. And I want to pull it under the previous thread. And now with the back wire again, and I'll show you in more detail in a moment, push it through. I can use the other thread to widen the hole a bit. But at first it can be a real struggle to pull the wire through, and that's why I'm doing 1 wire at a time. Sometimes you see someone pushing in 2 needles at the same time, but for some reason that doesn't work for me. I prefer to do it one after the other. Here we go. And this is our second stitch. Again, Pull it through. Make sure there's no twist in the wire. And what I like to do, I have these bench dogs, and to keep track of my needle, I'll stick them in here. And this way I know it can't create a loop, it can't create a knot, as long as that needle is in there. Now with the wire that's in the back, I'm going to finish this stitch. And I'm going to pull this stitch back a bit. Like so. Keep track of this wire and or thread and the needle. No twists on this side either, so you get a nice and flat stitch. And we made 3 whole stitches. So guys, I've done a couple of stitches now, and I want to show you the result thus far. And hopefully the camera will focus on the strap instead of on my face. As you can see, all the stitches are now nicely slanted, fairly consistent, both at the front and at the back of the strap. Fairly consistent, and when I'm done stitching the entire strap all the way around, I'm going to take a polished hammer and slightly tap on these stitches so they are going to be flush with the strap and nicely filling the groove we made earlier in the video. And same goes for the back. The stitches are now raised, of course, but they will be nice and flat and somewhat embedded in the back of the strap, making it real nice. Stitching a strap will usually take me approximately 12 to 15 hours doing both straps. So usually about 10 hours, 10-12 hours for the wider strap and 3 to 4 hours for the smaller, narrower strap. So I will be stitching for a while, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch the wider strap in a live stream, and by the time you're watching this video of course that live stream will already be live and this strap will already be stitched, and of course I'm going to finish this narrow strap as well, and I'll be back with you guys to show you the final result and finish those 2 straps. I'm finally done stitching the leather by hand, and you can see from the bandages on my fingers, it took a toll on my fingers, to be honest. I did most, if not all, of the stitching during 2 live streams, so if you haven't seen them, yeah, go check them out. I talk in depth about the stitching process, we talk about leather working and a lot of other very interesting topics while I'm stitching this leather strap, so I can highly recommend browsing through and checking out those 2 live streams, and I'll make sure to leave a link in the video description down below. And for anyone who hasn't already seen 1 or 2 of those live streams, I have a little secret to share with you, because I didn't make just 1 guitar strap. I made a second one, and during this video you've seen clips of me working on one or the other, and that's just for the ease of making the video, and have a spare strap for if something goes wrong. And something did go wrong, maybe some of you spotted it already. There was a tiny bit of glue that had set on the outside of this leather strap, and when I tried to remove it, it made a little mark, so I'm lucky enough I had a spare strap. And that's the one we're going to finish, and I'm going to finish this one yeah, in my own time. So I want my straps to be fully adjustable, and that's why we made 2 pieces. And the idea is that the narrower part is going to slide on the back of the wider strap, and with a hole pattern in both straps I can set the adjustments, and I'm going to fix these two parts together using so-called Chicago book screws. And what these are, basically they are a threaded rivet. So they're similar to a regular rivet. There's a bush, but instead you have to punch them together, so to say. There's a tiny screw you can use with just a regular screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and you can screw these two parts together. These Chicago book screws come in various colors and sizes, and you want to select the length of your book screw similar to the combined thickness of the leather, or just under the combined thickness of your leather. So next step is to determine the hole pattern on the straps, and of course I made a couple of templates. So with my hole templates I'm going to place it on the strap, and they have the same width as the strap itself. So I can put it in place and use a leather marker to mark where I need my adjustment holes to go. I'm using a 2 cm by 2 cm square hole pattern, but you can choose whatever you like. This works for me, and it looks rather well on my straps. Two more. I have all my holes marked, and you can add how many holes you want. It doesn't really matter if you want to do the entire strap, for example. These tiny holes doesn't hinder the integrity of your strap if you're using thick, good quality leather. And to punch these holes you can either use a revolving hole punch, and this is very handy tool because it has several sizes holes, and you can revolve them like so. And then you can have a piece of leather, and where you want your hole, just punch in a tiny hole. Very easy to use tool, very quick. But unfortunately for the book screws I'm using, my revolving punch isn't big enough, so I have to use a regular hole punch. And to punch a hole it's fairly easy. I'm using a nylon block, and with my hole punch, and this is a bit tricky because you have to do this by eye, and what I like to do is tip it over, make a little mark, and see if I'm very close to the center. And the nice thing about leather is it doesn't have to be that exact, and then just hit it with a hammer. And because it's a very thick leather, it can be a bit tricky to remove. But here we go, a nice punched hole all the way through. So once again, I'm trying to align it by side, make a little mark, and I can see I have to shift it over ever so slightly. And hit it. Secondary hole. Now let's do them all. And guys, I'm not joking, I really just had a brainwave that the hole punch might fit my arbor press, which it does. And now it's a lot easier, a lot cleaner to punch these holes. I can just try and align it, make that little mark to see if I'm centered, which I am, and just punch the hole and remove the strap. Much easier, less noise from hitting it with a hammer. And easier to remove the strap from the punch. Here we are, nice belt. Yeah guys, an arbor press, a very versatile and useful tool. So yeah, and they're not that expensive. I think I didn't even pay $100 for my 2-ton Cowley arbor press. It's very useful as a fret press, of course, to use as a punch press, a die press, you name it. So both useful for woodworking, guitar building in particular, and leatherworking. Going to put it aside, back in storage, and there's a couple other holes we need to punch, and that's the hole for the strap button. And punching the holes for the strap buttons is exactly the same as we just did for the adjustment holes, only a bigger punch, and you have two options. If you're going to use, like I am, Charlotte strap locks, you're going to need a 10mm punch to punch the hole needed for the strap lock. And it fits real nice in a 10mm hole. If you're, however, going to use regular strap buttons, then I recommend using a 7mm punch, or just over 1/4 of an inch. That's it. The distance I like to keep the hole for the strap button from the tip of the strap is 2 centimeters, so 20mm, or an inch, just under an inch. So I can use a leather marker, mark that hole, and of course I want it to be centered. So the width right here is 30 mils, 15. This is where I want the strap button hole to go. And of course, what you can also do, especially when using S-locks, and I might need to shift it, is use the washer or the nut for the strap lock and make sure it's nice in between your stitches. So I'm going to move, for this design, I'm going to move that hole a bit. Yeah, this is better. Nice and centered in between the stitches. So let's do the same for the wider leather strap. I'm going to mark 30mm from the tip and place the washer or the nut for the Charlotte strap locks. Mark that hole just like so, and then punch the hole. And punching the hole, very straightforward. Use a 10mm punch, and I'm going to align the edge of the punch with the edge of the circle I just drawn in. Make a mark, check if it's centered, which it is. Put the punch in place and whack it with a hammer. Twist it a bit, and now we have a nice hole cut in the leather. Let's do the other one. So we've marked our hole. Align the punch with the mark. Check if it's nice and centered, the mark we just made. Close your ears, we're going to hit it with a hammer. Check if we're all the way through, which we are not. We're all the way through. Twist the punch to cut through all the fibers. And here we are, one lovely cut hole. We're almost there. So now we have this lovely close-up. I can also show you how to install a Charlotte S-lock. Pretty straightforward, of course. Insert the strap lock itself into the hole. Make sure the opening is facing towards the strap. Take the lock nut. and tighten it down. Hold on to the lock on the inside, and Schaller has made a hole all the way through the locking nut, and then you can use an Allen key, for example, to help you tighten your strap lock. And then there's a tiny little screw in the lock nut itself that you can tighten if you're happy, so it doesn't come loose. And this is all there's to it. Now, for those who are new to strap locks and how they work, this is the strap button that goes into the guitar. And you can slide it in, lift the locking mechanism, and now the strap lock is in place. And to unlock it, pull on this knob and you can unlock the strap from your guitar. If you have a guitar, it usually is heavy enough so it locks itself, and only when you want to release it you can pull the lever and unlock the strap lock. So a nice secure way, and I think anyone should have this on their priced guitars. So let's finish the strap. But before we finish the strap, there's one thing I want to add to this guitar, and that's a Unquendor Guitars tulip logo. This is a stainless steel logo shield I had made a couple of years back that I always add to my straps. I have a template where it should go, and yeah, this is the nice thing about leatherworking. It's very similar techniques all over, because usually it's cutting and punching holes. So I'm going to mark the 2 holes I need to create to mount my shield, my logo, to the strap. I'm going to use the revolver die this time, and I need this die, and let's punch the holes for my logo. Same principle, make a mark where I need the hole to go, punch it all the way through. Same for the other one. Wiggle it around a bit so it cuts all the fibers, and we have 2 holes for our logo attachment. And to install my logo, I'm going to use these tiny rivets, and these are 2-part rivets. So there's a bottom part and there's a top part, and you can hit it with a hammer to secure them in place. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these, and my big fingers will be in the way a bit, and I'm going to put my leather strap on top of them so they just poke out of the leather, they just protrude. Put my logo on top of them and try to add that little cap to it, and then with a soft hammer tap it. I also have a setter that I can use to round over the rivet a bit. Often used with mixed results, I must say. Here we go. And the logo is attached to the leather, and there's nothing protruding on the back. Make sure you have a nice hard surface. This is a stainless steel anvil. And here we are, one logo attached. So guys, time to assemble the strap, and I changed my mind about the color for the book screws because all the hardware on the guitar will be chrome colored. I changed the color for the book screws to chrome, of course. Well, you can make a choice when it comes to which side you want to see on the strap. You have your Phillips head side and a flat side. I like to see the flat side on the outside of my strap. And what I usually recommend people doing to set the length for their strap is have a guitar strap, a regular guitar strap, adjust it to length and use that as a reference to decide which length you want the strap to be. But to assemble this strap, it's pretty straightforward. There's a loop on the back. I can insert the adjustment piece, and you can see you can adjust it by sliding it back and forth. So I'm going to go for a middle ground setting, align 4 of the holes and insert the book screws into the holes. Like so. And then flip the strap around and insert the screws. And my big fingers don't like them as much. So, and this is a very sturdy method of fixing 2 pieces of leather together and have it fully adjustable. And I really like the clean look of it once it's done. Oh, here we go. Just like so. It's very, very secure. There's no way I can pull this apart. And yeah, if you like, you can use shorter book screws to fill up the remaining holes, or use other forms of studs in these remaining holes. Yeah, nice way of securing a strap in my opinion. Nice and clean look. And to really finish this strap, of course, we're going to mount the remaining S-lock. Make sure it's aligned properly. Take the mounting nut. Tighten it using a Allen key or a hex key. Like so. And here is our strap done. I'm pretty pleased with how this one turned out. I really like how it's still a very subtle guitar strap, although there's a lot of orange on it. I think it won't take away any attention from any guitar hanging from it, and still being a very high quality product on its own. So yeah, I'm very happy with how this one turned out. I hope you liked this video. It took a lot of effort making the strap and making this video, to be honest. So if you like this video, please let me know by leaving a like, leave a comment, question or suggestion in the comment section down below. This really helps the YouTube algorithm to pick up my content, show it to possible other viewers that hopefully help me to grow my channel in the long run. So yeah, thank you for your input down below. If you'd like to support me more direct, you can do so by leaving me a tip via the tip jar link in the video description, or get yourself a nice t-shirt, a hoodie or a coffee mug from the Unquendor Goodie store underneath this video. And guys, I really appreciate all the support you are giving me. That said, if you're new to my channel and you happen to like what you've seen, please consider subscribing and hit that little notification bell so you get notified when I upload a new video or when I go live with a live stream. Yeah, guys, that's it for this episode. I hope to see you all in the next one. But until then, as always, take care and bye-bye.